It was one of the most sensational and one of the most closely watched trials of 2012. Ex-Rutgers student Ravi stood trial for using a webcam to spy on his former roommate's tryst with another man. That roommate, Tyler Clementi, then jumped to his death. In what was regarded as a highly controversial decision, Ravi was sentenced by a New Jersey judge to 30 days in jail. Ever since the trial ended, the judge in that case has kept silent about his decision, but now, for the first time, he's speaking out about the case and the role that he played. He spoke exclusively with FiOS 1 News anchor CJ Papa.
Judge, this was the first of its kind in the state of New Jersey, and nationally, cyberbullying is just coming through the courts. How did you prepare for something where there wasn't a lot of precedent?
I'm sure I prepared for this case harder and longer than any case I've ever presided over, for a lot of reasons, and not because of the media coverage, because this case was different. And I don't mean the suicide, which obviously makes it different, but the charges were what you don't usually see in the criminal part. In the criminal part, the case you see, burglaries, robberies, drugs. I've been county prosecutor. I can't recall us ever having an invasion of privacy case.
Judge, at the end of the defense's case, Ravi didn't take the stand. Did that surprise you?
I was a little bit surprised, but Steve Altman is a very experienced attorney. He's been doing this work a long time. He's very prominent. I'm sure he had his reasons for it, so I'm not criticizing him because he didn't call him. I wouldn't do that. But I understand why he didn't call him.
Why was that?
I'll tell you why. And I'm not a mind reader, but because he gave a statement to the police. And in Steve Altman's summation, if you recall, he replayed the entire statement where Darun spoke to the police without a lawyer present. So, again, you'd have to ask Steve Altman why he didn't call him, but my guess is that he could tell the jury, or he could show the jury, well, you already got his statement. The reason I don't know what kind of witness he would have made was because I never heard him speak.
On sentencing day, Judge, you said, quote, "I do not believe Ravi hated Tyler Clementi, but I do believe he acted out of colossal insensitivity." Do you think the jury got it right convicting Ravi on the biased intimidation charges?
I thought you'd ask me that. There was no evidence that, for example, Ravi ever uttered a homophobic slur or something like that. But you're asking me what I think of the jury's verdict? Well, I'll say this. I think the trial was tried by both sides thoroughly and very competently, and I think the trial was fair.
Can you describe for us what it was like for you that night coming home after this, and at all do you, when you see all of this fallout, do you say to yourself, did I make the right decision?
The sentence was on a Monday. I will tell you, I did not turn on the TV, the radio, or pick up a newspaper for a week. I will tell you, two things did surprise me. I was surprised by some of the letters and phone calls I got that people thought what I did was absolutely wrong, and how palpable and how strong and how nasty some of the letters were. I also was surprised in a nice way by some of the really beautiful letters I got. I know in my heart I believe I was fair.
Can you share something from one of those letters that stands out with us?
One woman wrote me a letter and said, I was never sure there was justice in this world. When my son told me he wanted to be a lawyer, I was very cynical. And it just is even tough for me to talk about. It was so beautiful. And she said to me, now I hope he's a lawyer and hope he ends up like you. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Someone else wrote me a letter, someone from, I hope I say this, I'm politically correct, from the Indian community, and saying she spoke for a group of organizations, and she said, coming from my country, I didn't believe Ravi would be treated fairly in the American judicial system. She goes, but now you convinced me he was. That was a nice letter.
Judge, the prosecution wanted 10 years. The defense wanted nothing. You came up with 30 days. What were the mitigating and aggravating factors for you to come up with that decision for Ravi?
I thought about that sentence for months. So I had a lot of time to think about that. So at the end of the day, I believe I was fair. It's your job to be fair. I had a pre-sentence report which was neutral, which, by the way, recommended no jail time. My perception is that they perceived that he was a prankish young adult who went over the line, who didn't deserve a jail term. That's my perception of their conclusion.
Do you feel in some way that the outrage from people who didn't agree with your decision was the fact that they wanted Darun Ravi to be made an example of, and that was your job to make an example of Darun Ravi?
Many people, I do not believe, fully understood that Darun Ravi was not charged with contributing or causing Tyler Clemente's death. But as a judge, I can only sentence someone on what they're convicted of, not something they're not even charged with.
If you ran into Darun Ravi this week, what would you say to him?
I would just simply say, I hope you're doing well and leading a productive life, because again, he's got his whole life in front of him, and he's clearly bright.
If Tyler Clemente were alive today, do you think this case would have ended up in a courtroom, a criminal courtroom?
People have said that what precipitated the case was not the invasion, but was the suicide. That if Tyler Clemente hadn't taken his life, it may have been dealt with, quote, in-house at Rutgers. I can't comment on that. I don't know what the prosecutor would have done or would not have done.
Interesting, and always interesting to get the insights of the guy who's presiding over a case, especially looking back at it months later, as we now have the opportunity to do. And we talked a little bit about this last night, but Michael and Jessica, I'm curious. This was a case that changed my opinion of hate crimes. I had supported the idea of hate crimes and hate crime laws before this trial, and all of a sudden this case made me wonder about the wisdom of trying to figure out somebody's frame of mind, what they were thinking before charging them or sentencing them. What's your take on hate crimes right now? Did this case influence it at all?
I think they're actually two different issues. It's not just about hate crimes. It's not about somebody getting attacked waiting for a subway because they're wearing a yarmulke or they're wearing a headscarf. It also implicates the internet, social media, notions of privacy, and the consequences of these things that didn't exist before the technology was so commonplace. So I think we're actually in uncharted legal territory, the intersection of privacy, hate crimes, and the availability of these images on hard drives forever, everywhere. So I think there need to be new laws regarding this. And should he have been made an example of? Perhaps people need to know that this sort of behavior that may seem prankish and easily posted in social media sites actually has real-life consequences.
Jessica, the idea of hate crime penalties give you any pause?
Yeah, well, I think Michael is right, and the fact that the technology has sort of surpassed what our legal system was used to dealing with. So we certainly have to look at it, but because I don't think it's a problem that's going to be going away, especially when you have younger people that don't always have or exercise the best judgment. So certainly he needed to be made an example of to sort of deter the potential of this behavior happening to other kids. It's just really unfortunate for both families.
That it is. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, we're going to talk about the U.S.'s handling of suspected terrorists. Are you okay with the increased use of drone strikes? How about indefinite detention? That's next. Stay with us.